So we are working our way through the 7-point mind training, incredible text on how to really make our whole life our practice. And we're at a key juncture here, which is really the essence of the whole teaching. So we've been going through it, and I'm going to try to present without having to review too much. We have some newer people here as well. But before I begin, I just want to take a moment to reflect upon the meditation we just did. All too often, I believe that people discount something as simple as a meditation on the breath. You know, like, oh, I'll do a few moments on breath, then I'm going to do this meditation. Or I'll do a little bit, then I'm going to do that meditation. And in this text as well, it's brought up that foundationally, a concentration meditation, a stability of the mind, is a prerequisite for other meditations. And so, unless we have a stable mind, in between laxity, laziness, and excitation, unless we're able to direct our attention, our other meditations are usually not that successful. It's not that they're not beneficial at all, but we just don't get the bang for the buck, you know, to say more precisely. And this is coming to mind for me just because I had a session with someone the other day when we were traveling, someone who had meditated for many years, lots of Vipassana meditation, lots of mindfulness meditations and things. And they were struggling. They were struggling with rumination. Some tragedies happened, some fears and some concerns, and their mind kept going there. And so, you know, I asked her, what are your meditations? And she talked about the Vipassana and the mindfulness. And what's unclear for many people is that we can have a lot of wisdom, and I think we all know that doesn't always help us, right? You know, we can have a nice conversation with a dear friend, walk out the door, and I can be an idiot in a minute, you know, and I can forget everything I just learned. I can get caught up in emotion or fear or worry or concern, and I'm there. When I meditate, it was all good. Now I walk out the door, and now I'm, you know, caught up in worry and fear and stuff. And the practice of cultivating attention, of shamatha, of what we just did, of really balancing the mind, becomes this incredible tool that allows you to, when you catch yourself ruminating, what do? You can bring it back. When your mind goes off on a tangent, you can bring it back. You can direct your attention where you would like it to go. So when worry comes, and we can label it worry, and worry is worrying about something you ultimately don't have any power over, right? So that's not very helpful in general, and or ever maybe, some people would say. But you may have noticed that sometimes even though you know, well, worrying about this isn't going to be helpful, your mind might just keep going there. So with a practice like shamatha, what you're really developing the attention is to be able to let go of that and bring your awareness back to what you choose to attend to in this moment and what you can do something about. And with like mindfulness meditation is a practice that is based in what we call Vipassana insight meditations. And it's actually designed for once you are mindful. It's not designed to create mindfulness. Shamatha creates mindfulness. So shamatha develops the ability to be attentive and be mindful. And mindfulness then, once you have that ability, then you bring mindfulness meditations in, and you bring that stability of mind, and you engage, and then you look at how things arise, and you start to attend to things with that clarity, with that ability. And so if we start at the other end, where it has some benefit, I mean, we just don't get the full potential. And so even though someone who's done it for 20 years, you know, you may notice they can still get caught up in a lot of the same stuff that they know better about. But if we were to take some time and really establish a balanced, clear, stable mind, and then engage in these more advanced insight practices, you're just going to be a lot more productive with them. So whenever we come here, I always start with a shamatha practice, you know, because that is really the muscle of all of our meditations. And the other meditations are all beneficial, and they all have a purpose. And that's the other thing that many people don't realize, is that when we meditate, different meditations are designed to do different things. It's like a toolbox. This mental affliction for this meditation. This mental affliction, I've got this meditation. And so they're not all the same. So if I'm a meditator, I'm just trying to relax, I'm just trying to do that, and I don't know what I'm actually trying to accomplish. I have some vague idea that, people that sit around and look like this seem pretty peaceful. That's not going to solve my mental afflictions very well. But if I know that this type, like a loving kindness meditation, is really going to be an antidote to a lot of this anger and hatred, I'm feeling a lot of that, well, then, yeah, that's going to be helpful. If I know that my biggest issue in life is an obsessive compulsive mind that's constantly wandering all over, well, concentration meditation is designed for that. So they're all designed for different things, and any authentic meditation lineage will have a very specific mental affliction that it's trying to address. So they're all good. You just want to use the right one for what you're trying to accomplish, and so it's really helpful. But whatever the practice is, foundationally, shamatha, balanced, clear mind, is going to make all the others even more effective. And so that was my discussion with this person, and I've had this with many people for a while over these years, of people who have practiced but still find themselves getting caught up. And there's something really incredible about being able to notice that you're getting caught up in worry or trauma or fear, and the ability to go, oh, that's not here now. And actually be here now. So every time you bring your attention back to the breath, that's the muscle you're developing. And it's an incredible tool, because once you have the ability to direct your awareness to what you choose to be aware of, you alter your whole experience of life. I mean, that's the ultimate control, is to control what I'm paying attention to, and it's going to change my experience. So it's no small thing when we sit here and breathe, is the main point I want to make. And generally, when I teach meditation, I like to invite people to be very clear about why they're doing this meditation. Why am I doing this? So even if it's a metta meditation, why am I doing this? If it's a compassion meditation, why am I doing this? If it's an insight, why am I doing this? So I know why and its importance. And then that makes it, really brings the ability to be more engaged, rather than just, I got to go meditate for 20 minutes, or, check, is it 25 minutes? When's that thing going off? And because that does happen sometimes, doesn't it? You're sitting there going, I need to get this meditation so I can go do stuff. And we forget that we do all that stuff so we can meditate. It's a different shift, and we forget that sometimes, because I gotta get my meditation done so I can go do that, and then we forget. No, I do all that stuff so I actually have time to be present in my life and develop some attention. And it's like, oh yeah, but we forget all that because our minds get caught up in things. So developed practice where we bring some attention and intention, know why I'm doing something, is just such an incredible transformative piece to any of the practice that we have. And so we do that when we begin our practices. All right. Anyone have any question on meditation while I pull this up? I usually talk all the way through and don't leave time for questions. Anything pops up when I'm talking, just throw it out there. You online? Sorry, you can't do that. But you could probably type a question. And yeah, you could type a question. And those guys in the back behind the curtain, pay no attention to the people behind the curtain there. They'd be happy to pass it along. Okay, so we're in the 7-point mind training, and really everything about this training is giving us the ability to transform our daily life into Dharma practice, into the path of awakening, into a path of no more suffering for ourselves and others. So it's pretty good stuff. And the first couple of points were preliminaries, and then really looking at how things actually exist, and then how do we support understanding how things exist. And the real guts of all mind training practice is pretty simple: how to transform adversity onto the path. Now that's pretty cool, right? So adversity, difficulties, challenges, well, rather than see them as such, they become the opportunity for awakening. And so that's what mind training is working with. Mind training is saying that everything that's happening, and especially the more challenging things in our lives, are really the grist for the mill, the opportunity to awaken. And unless we understand this, it's going to just hurt a lot, because it's just going to suck. And we're going to forget that in order for us to awaken, in order for us to have real liberation or peace, well-being, in order for us to make good use of this life that we have, without any adversity, we wouldn't even be on the path. Right? Nobody got here because everything was all good. That's not how it works. If it's all good, you know what we're doing, right? We're planning our next vacation. You know, we're not going to the Dharma Center, right? But adversity has us go, wow, what's going on? And if we look at our life, you're going to find that your greatest amounts of personal growth, insight, all came from adversity, right? I mean, that's when we grow. That's when we look a little deeper. That's when we question what's going on. And yet, when adversity comes, we want to run from it. And we don't want to recognize that, oh, this is an opportunity to cultivate wisdom, merit, the path of awakening. This is an opportunity to see something clearly. And so in the sense of learning to transform adversity into the path, we need to recognize first, well, why is that so helpful, and why isn't it just better to feel good, right? So we have to understand where the real suffering comes from, right? And as long as we think it's out there, we're going to have a lot of suffering. Because if we don't understand the cause of suffering, we're not going to eliminate it. And it really looks like it's out there. It looks like it's so-and-so, and they treated me this way, or my boss is like that, or so-and-so did this, or that jerk's cutting me off on the freeway, or whatever. You know, as long as my mind sees my outer problems as the cause of my suffering, there's no way to avoid it, because that's really not the cause. And so we've unpacked that over these last weeks. And the real source, and that's where we're getting here, in the text, is that the discussion of transforming these unfavorable circumstances in the path of awakening, the first of these concerns is an adjustment of attitude, and this transformation of mind is examined in terms of relative and ultimate bodhicitta. And where am I? That we distinguish between the enemy and friend. And the terminology of enemy here, enemy is what is the cause of suffering. Friend is what promotes harmony and well-being. So the enemy is self-centeredness, the priority or value judgment that expresses itself in such thoughts as, my well-being is more important than any other individual. I come first. If anyone is to be praised, it should be me. If one thing is better than others, then I should have the best. If one person has to lose and another to win, I should win. This attitude is the enemy. By definition, an enemy brings us suffering. It could be a mental suffering, It could be contempt, slander. It could be a physical suffering. As we look more closely at self-centeredness, we will see that it fits the definition exactly. But if self-centeredness is the enemy, what is the friend? Concern for the welfare of others. The beauty of this thought lies in the nature of our existence, given that all of us exist as dependently related events, devoid of any isolated individual existence. We must move with an awareness of the well-being of others around us. So we'll pause there for a moment. So we have some new people here. We've been unpacking this. And real simply put, though, is there any mental afflicted state, and by mental afflicted state, anger, resentment, jealousy, envy, frustration, that does not arise from self-centeredness? How I think it ought to be, how I would like it to be. What's in it for me and my friends? Me and mine, you and yours. When you start to see, like, somebody can hit me with a baseball bat, that's going to hurt, right? Now, are they my enemy, or, that could heal? But what about the resentment I'll carry around for 10 years about that jerk who hit me with that bat, and or someone who did me wrong, and that resentment I carry for 30 years, or that pain and that anger? Where's the real enemy involved in that? As opposed to, why did he hit me with a bat? What was going on? What were all the causes and conditions that gave rise to someone whose anger and frustration would lead someone to harming someone with a bat? And understanding that there's a lot bigger picture with a lot more moving parts in this world. Can I be focused on how do I heal? Or can I be focused on primarily how someone treated me poorly? What would I like to bring attention to? And so when we think about this idea of self-cherishing, I was just reflecting. I just went to California, and we drove back. We drove in San Francisco in different. There's a little more traffic there, a little more, just a bit. And it's funny because out here, I mentioned the other day, I was with somebody, and he said, "Man, this traffic in Carbondale's getting crazy." And to him it was, because it's relative, right? It's relative. And I told him, the day I think Carbondale traffic is getting crazy, I'm going to need some perspective adjustment. So I'm in San Francisco, and you can see the anger and the frustration and the fear and the resentment just on a freeway. Like when somebody cuts in front of you or something like that, it's me and them. I'm in this car and it's them. And we forget these very fundamental things like, I'm not in traffic, I am traffic. Well, that's a little more accurate, isn't it? So we get these very distorted views of me against others. And now you can start to see where now, how do I, even when I meet someone, how do I judge them up? Are they someone who's going to treat me good, not treat me good? Are they, how are they dressed? How do I relate to them? Am I more important? Are they less important if I'm going to a thing? And, how many subtle things are going on as soon as I see someone? And how do I judge myself in relation to them? Or worry about what I'm wearing when I go somewhere, or what somebody might think? I mean, all this arises from self-cherishing. And you start going down this list of anger, resentment, jealousy, frustration, fear, anxiety, etc., 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 is all coming from one place. Me really concerned about me. Now, what if instead of having a view that says, I want the best for me, what if I had the view of, I want what's best for the most concerned in whatever situation we're in? Or we can even replace that with something less esoteric and just say, what's the healthiest thing for the most people concerned? How would that change my interactions? One would imagine if I stopped keeping score. Transactional relationships. After all I've done for you, you treat me like that? How many times have we thought that? How come it hurts when a dear friend lets us down, sometimes more than someone we don't know so well. After all we've been through, you could do that to me. So what am I focused on? I'm on the one thing they just did to me. I'm not focused on the 100 things we all did together when we were friends. Are they the 100 things we did together and been there and all the kindnesses they've showed me? Or are they the one thing that they did and they let me down? Which are they? What's going on here? Things change, don't they? Because I'm keeping score, keeping track. And I would like things to be a certain way, and I'd like that person to be a certain way. And heaven forbid, I've never done any of those things that I'm holding someone else accountable to. I've never cut anybody off on a freeway or snuck into a lane or sped or not paid attention or done, let anybody down. I've always been so kind and thoughtful. Yeah, how many times have I not returned something, not listening? How many times it's just, it's endless. And so we have a mind that doesn't relate very well to reality to begin with, and then it makes me the most important person in the universe. The real enemy is not the people and the events that's coming out there. It's the way I'm relating to them and placing myself in a superior point of being. And then it becomes me and mine, and then there's you and yours. And as soon as there's me and mine and you and yours, I've got tension, suffering, worry, concern, fear, anxiety, and so forth. We and ours suddenly eliminates a lot of that. How can you have tension when you're thinking about we and ours as opposed to me and mine? Even if you were doing something and somebody asked for some help, right? Now there's a tension. Well, I need to do this. I don't want to talk to you. That phone rings. We got to do that. I don't want to. Now there's a tension because I really want to do this, as opposed to, can I be here for that? Or is this the healthiest thing to do? And so, number one, we have to get beyond a philosophical idea that the real source of my suffering is in here. It actually needs to be a reality that we understand. And so we need to test it. So none of this is any good by just listening and talking about it. It's an interesting conversation. The real way to get this in our being is to test it. Check it out. Notice when I have anger, resentment, jealousy, frustration, worry, fear, and concern. Is that somehow directly related to me thinking my view or my way is the most important? Or not? And noticing that. And what happens if I were to shift my perspective a little bit and say, instead of what's the best thing for me and mine, what if I asked a different question and said, what's the healthiest thing to do for most people here, given the situation that has now arisen? As opposed to, I didn't want this to arise, and it shouldn't have arisen, and you shouldn't have done that, and so and so. And how many times have we got into the if only? If only that idiot wouldn't have done that, I wouldn't have to do this. Well, it did happen, and there's causes for it to happen, and now we're doing this. And now why am I so worked up? Because I have to do this extra work. And what makes the work hard? This is one of the things I've been really fascinated with this year, is I'm trying to find something that's actually hard to do. Like mentally suffering type hard to do. And I haven't found it yet. Because what I keep finding is what I think is hard isn't really the actual action, it's my attitude about the action. Like if you have to stay an extra hour at work, well, what is it that you're doing at work? Are you sitting at a computer? Are you washing dishes? Are you cooking? What's hard about that? What's hard about it? What's hard is I thought I should have been off an hour earlier. That's what makes it hard. If I, have to, like I've just been undoing a bunch of bookkeeping stuff where it was all inputted differently, and I've had to go back and manually go through the whole last year and so forth. And it's really not very hard. You just click on a button and you read the thing and you click on another button and, nothing's really hard about it. But you could easily have the attitude like, I have to go back and do a whole years of things. Where's the suffering? The suffering's from my attitude thinking I shouldn't have to do it. It's not the actual action of doing it when we get done. So if you start paying attention when we have these feelings of this is hard or this is difficult or so-and-so shouldn't treat me that way, where's the suffering coming? I think I should be treated differently. I think, and so we start noticing what's hard. What's really hard is that I want someone to treat me differently. And if I actually felt pretty good about myself, I don't think I'd really be that concerned about how you treat me. As a matter of fact, when I'm really comfortable inside, it's easy to be very humble because there's no competition anymore. And you just want others to be healthy because I'm okay. But when I start self-cherishing pride, how things are, look at me, how I should be, how I would like others to treat me, how I'd like my things to look. Now, we're going to have a lot of suffering, a lot of fear, a lot of concern, a lot of worry, a lot of anxiety. So here, in order for us to really work with suffering, we need to understand its underlying causes. And its underlying cause is always going to be related back to a really strong sense of self-cherishing, which is not to be confused with a healthy sense of self-worth. That's a different thing, because when you have self-worth, you don't have self-cherishing. When you have value, nobody can take that from you. Doesn't matter. When you have self-worth, how somebody talks to you isn't going to freak you out. When you have self-worth, you're not judging yourself with others. So self-worth is the antidote to self-cherishing and pride and ego and all these struggles. Humility is a byproduct of worthiness. It's easy to be humble when you feel okay. Nothing to prove. But when I'm insecure, it's not so easy to be humble. I need you to know who I am. And I need somebody's approval or validation. So we forget this as we engage in life, and sometimes we get caught up in that, how others ought to treat me. And then we start thinking that I'm angry because so-and-so treated me that way. Well, that's not why we're angry, is it? What's the real cause of our anger? Where does anger exist? It exists in our mind stream. And the cause of anger is because I'm insecure, fearful, or worried about something, or really caught up in a sense of self that doesn't really exist. That's what we unpacked earlier. And as my favorite Emerson quote always says, for every minute of anger we have, what do we lose? 60 seconds of happiness. Scientifically proven, every time. Every time. Never fail. And then, why am I hanging on to this anger? As though it's a precious treasure. Huh? My resentment? You tell me not to be angry at so-and-so? What are you, nuts? I'm going to guard this resentment. Let me tell you what a jerk they are. Whew. Or something that doesn't even exist anymore. Something that happened years ago. Something in my mind. And then when I do get my self-righteous action in place and set them straight, tell my friends about it, does that eliminate anger, or does that validate my anger? So the next time somebody tries to talk to me like that, what'll happen? More anger. Instead of understanding that people are usually treating you as a reflection of what they're going through, their level of well-being or lack thereof, their own insecurities, their own fears, their own worries, their own concerns, their own traumas that they've grown up in their life, their own struggles. That how someone treats you is a reflection of their own level of either discomfort or comfort, or well-being or lack thereof. And when we understand that, we're much more able to engage with them skillfully, with healthy boundaries in ways that are more productive and don't need to give rise to I'm better than that other human being who's just like me, trying to do the best they can with what they have. And I don't know their story. But I do know that deep down they want to find happiness and well-being just like me. So if I remember that, that's going to be a lot more accurate way. So I want to recognize here, is before we go even further, start to understand that the real source of mental and emotional suffering, it's here, it's not out there. But it sure looks like it is, doesn't it? So it says, if we start to understand that all of our happiness, all of our well-being is dependent upon others, well, now I have a different way of interacting with others. Because everyone is the cause for my enlightenment, for my well-being. Is there anything that we have in our life that isn't because of others? Isn't because of a myriad of others? You know, whether it's the roads you drive on and who built those, the food we eat and where did all that come from, you know, the weather, the environment, the animals. I mean, everything we have in our life, this building we're in, all of these things is from others. Everyone. And that same person I might be frustrated today, it might be the reason I have a job. It might be, you know, just all these interconnections. And even how I perceive myself is only in dependence upon others. And so if I start to recognize that, I start to see I don't live in isolation. There is no independent John that's separate from everybody else. That's the problem, because I think there is. But if we start to recognize that I live independence upon all other things, and I only appear independence upon others, and that this notion of John is changing all the time. Right now, Buddhist teacher, not long ago, father giving away the bride. You know, not long before that, you know, some schmuck riding a bike. You know, not long before that, just a thirsty guy looking for some water. And you know, and I'm all these roles. I'm not any one of those things. And how I appear to each of you, I'll have a different relationship, and I'll be a whole different person to each other person in this room. I'm a husband to one of them. He's in the back keeping an eye on me. And those relationships and how we appear in any given moment is always in dependence upon who I'm with, the moment I'm in, the circumstances I'm in, how I'm feeling today, whether I got enough sleep. And all these things give rise to how I am in this moment. There's no same John that shows up every day or even an hour ago. I'm changing all the time. And I'm only arising in dependence upon everyone else, who I'm with, what's going on, my mental attitudes, whether I ate, didn't eat, what I've been exposed to. And so if I start to understand, then I can open up to this next piece here where it says, if we realize that we exist as dependently related events, that we don't live in any isolation, then we move with an awareness of the well-being of others around us. In other words, my life's a lot better if your life's a lot better. I mean, when we get that recognition, when more people are fed and healthy and well and feeling okay, we're all going to benefit. But if I'm in competition with you, nobody's going to benefit. And so we really want to look at this deeper cause that's going on. So we move with this awareness of our interdependence. Just as our interdependence with the rest of life is not cut off at any point, our concern for others should not be limited arbitrarily. Instead, leave it wide open and boundless. There is no inherent cutoff point between ourselves and the life around us, just as there's no inherent cutoff point between America and other continents, between human beings, animals, and other types of sentient beings. In the Buddhist worldview, the universe is infinite, and there is an infinity of life in the universe. To cultivate this attitude of cherishing others with affection and concern for their welfare is to act in perfect accord with reality, priming ourselves for the realization of emptiness, the way things actually exist, independence upon each other. And so this text really, we spent the time really unpacking how things actually arise as dependently related events, and it's a hard thing to get the realization of. When you do, you're pretty much liberated. So it's the path. But it's important to start with understanding at least a philosophical or a mental construct, so that then we can start testing it. And then if you test it, you can start noting how my mental afflictions arise. And we're going to see quite frequently. It's from me being separate from you. It's from me wanting things to be a certain way, and so forth. And not really grasping that the way I perceive everything has a lot to do with my perception of them. Which sounds pretty obvious, and yet we forget that. Because we think so-and-so's an idiot. Well, why is he an idiot? Because I don't like him, basically. He does things I don't like, and I've probably done some of those things that he's doing that I don't like. It's different. That's different. I was misunderstood. He's just an idiot. And we just put these labels on people, on things, and events, and that's what they become. And we forget they're changing and everything. And how I'm experiencing them has a lot to do with how I'm bringing my attention to them. Like that friend that did me wrong. Suddenly I'm paying attention to the one thing, not the 100 things. And then if they would have told you, well, the reason he did that was because he just lost his wife, well, now all of a sudden, everything's shifting again. What am I paying attention to? What am I paying attention to? And how things arise. So unless we make this distinction between friend and enemy, self-centeredness can motivate all of our mundane activities. And this is the trap, right? The 8 worldly concerns. Pretty much everything we do, we're thinking about us. And we're keeping score. We're keeping score. Even, in a house. People are with families, right? You guys ever keep score about who did the dishes? And I always do the dishes and so on and so on. How come it can't put the thing in the... We just keep score, And it's like, how come I'm always the one doing this? And I don't know about you, but I kind of found it fascinating that, doing dishes is not very hard. It's really not. What's really hard is thinking you shouldn't be doing the dishes. That's really hard. But, water, soap, it's not a challenging thing. Every now and then you get that stuck on stuff, But, yeah. But this is something to understand. What's making it hard is me. It's not the action. It's not the action. And what's really doing this is self-cherishing motivates all our mundane activities. Cherishing others can become, and even cherishing others can become an extension of self-centeredness. My spouse, my children, my relatives, my friends are all necessary for my well-being, just like my other possessions. And for this reason, I care for them. I take care of the things I like. I take care of the people that take care of me. I keep score. And, some people even say, well, I really love so-and-so. I go, you really love so-and-so? Or do you love how they make you feel? Do you love them when they do things that make you feel good? And then they do the things that you don't like. Well, now I don't love them. Well, love is not, like that, right? Love is, I want you to be happy and well. I love you. I want you to be happy and flourish and do well. But we tend to love how people make us feel, and that's wrapped in self-cherishing. And then it's a very conditional love. As long as they do this and that, I'll love you. which is different than there's healthier people I have in your life and unhealthier people. You can still love people that are not in a good relationship and wish them well. But we kind of get trapped with my stuff and how things make me feel and people make me feel, the things I like. And the stuff that we really love, a year later, it's just stuff we're trying to get rid of at a yard sale. Yeah. Worse yet, that stuff we really love that's in a box in the closet somewhere. We don't even see for a year or two. And then we open it up and go, oh, it's so cool. I love this. Put it back. That one fascinates me. I always had to, don't want to part with that. Couldn't live without this. Put it in a box. Been there 5 years. Open it up. Oh, I'm so glad I still have this. Hadn't thought about it in years. Couldn't live without it. See how our emotions and attitudes arise with things? Couldn't part with it. Oh my God. I lost that thing. Hadn't seen it in 5 years. Forgot I even had it. And so-and-so told me they lost it. So our self-cherishing works its way into these things, and then we really get possessive and transactional. And now I really want my spouse, my children, my relatives to be a certain way. And I want my possessions to be taken care of a certain way. I want them to look a certain way. And he says, likewise, our self-centeredness may be rampant in our spiritual activities. We may meditate, go to teachings, do retreats, all in order to find greater peace in this lifetime for ourselves. Even if we deepen this by taking future lives into account, we may still be motivated by the avoidance of our own future misery. In other words, I'm going to do this Dharma practice so I can feel peaceful and at ease, And there are people that get pretty addicted to meditating. It's peaceful, it's ease, and then lawnmower kicks on outside, and that peace and ease gets pretty frustrating all of a sudden. And he's saying that we can even let this seep its way into me thinking about, I want to use my life well so I'm not in a bad next life. And then even that's self-cherishing. We may even aspire to attain Buddhahood for our own well-being. All of these are expressions of self-centeredness. And the point he's making here is that any Dharma practice motivated by self-centeredness is faulty. Mahayana Buddhist teachings express the view that no spiritual practice, whether the deepest meditation taught in the sutras or the completion stage of highest yoga tantra, can lead to full awakening if it's motivated by self-centeredness. So he's just going right to the core, right here. And that's the starting point, because that unlocks the door for spiritual practice. Because the root of it, through all this, is that the source of my suffering is really a grasping to this self in a particular way that ultimately doesn't even exist. It's my misperception that creates all this suffering. So right off the bat, you want to, and that's why we've been talking about bodhicitta, this great compassion for all sentient beings. That is going to be the sort of the fuel of really cutting through all of my mental and emotional suffering. Is really a care and concern for all sentient beings. And if I think about that as a reason to get up every morning, that the world's a better place if I work on improving my own mind, my own values, my own clarity, my own wisdom for all sentient beings, well, it's a whole different motivation to get up in the morning. And it's a fuel that it's a direct antidote to the cause of all my afflictive states. And all my afflictive states does not make the world a better place. Doesn't make my place better either. And that's the faulty grasping, because somehow we think I can just get this decorated up just enough to where I can, be comfortable enough. And then it'll be okay. And hasn't panned out, though. hasn't panned out that. So, the task this week is really starting to notice. Not just be some interesting thought process, but when I'm angry, when I'm frustrated, when I have some anxiety, when a resentment rises, when there's some agitation, how much is that related to how I want things to be? And what would happen if I dropped that and asked, what's the healthiest way to be? Because that takes all the mystery out of it. It's not what's the most benefit. What's the healthiest thing to do here? Now that things are like this, drop the how it should be and how it shouldn't have happened. In this situation, given the way things are in this moment, what's the healthiest thing to do for all of us? Instead of how I think it ought to be, or how it should be, or how I'd like it to be. And see if it doesn't shift. See if we can't notice that there's a link between my own self-importance. My own self-importance is wrapped usually in my own insecurity. And see if that isn't the source of a lot of suffering, how I would like to be treated. And so, as we get ready to wrap up, we will dedicate the merit and wisdom of our time together for the benefit of all sentient beings. Let us dedicate the merit and wisdom that we have accumulated here together, both individually and collectively. We dedicate it for the benefit of all sentient beings. May all sentient beings be free of suffering and find lasting happiness. And may we be able to use the merit and wisdom accumulated here today and throughout our lives to purify our own minds, to help us see clearly so that we can achieve our awakening minds for the benefit of all sentient beings. All right, well, thank you all so much for joining us. And yeah, feel free to check the calendar. Next Wednesday, by the way, is the second Wednesday of the month, so it's a potluck. So after the teaching, we get together and share a little food and a little community. So second Wednesday of the month, and we also have, there's just a lot going on. I don't have time to list it all, but it's great to have a center and things happening every day, including a class with shrines and altars and all kinds of things going on. So be well, try to stay out of trouble, and thanks for joining us online as well.